is so important. We're not even going to do a cold open today.
Oh God!
No cold open, no tangents, no discussions on whether the Ku Klux Klan have chapters in the northeast of England. We're going straight into it today.
You're not even lubing me up.
Not even a pity spit on your back to run down.
That famous district of Durham.
Yeah.
Putty spit.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me. Right, you get a little bit uncomfortable, all those people listening to the episode. They're like, oh, isn't this about D&D? What the fuck's he on about? Hello, welcome back to Think Tank Kids. This is a podcast where three guys from the Northeast, we bring a subject to each other every week, and we teach each other about it. My name is Chris.
My name is Ian.
My name's Nathan.
And today, it's a Chris episode again, which is lovely, but we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, which is the history of role-playing games. Role-playing is when you pretend to love each other outside of the bedroom, and then that's you playing a role. And it's really, really interesting. And for Nathan, the role-playing is when his wife tells him she loves him. That's the role she sometimes plays. And Ian's role-play is when his mattress takes the form of a very sexy woman who beguiles him.
That is truer than I'd liked it to be.
Yeah, I've heard Ian puts a champagne glass under his mattress with two sponges and just goes at it.
See, I'm married, right? I'm married, and I say that like I'm trying to defend myself. I'm married, but I keep seeing a lot of Instagram reels of people buying Pringles tubes, two sponges, and a pair of rubber gloves. And I know exactly what it's for.
Wow.
But I'm like, I don't need to be seeing this. This isn't for me.
Your algorithm's weird.
My algorithm.
The Pringles tube, they're really big.
Yeah, so my algorithm. Well, I am a mandingo. I'm actually black. A lot of people don't know this about me. So my algorithm,
especially those of us who've met you.
It was news to me.
It's my algorithm, just as you would expect. My algorithm thinks I'm some kind of shaman who lives in the woods on the edge of civilization. It does not. I'm quite proud of this. They do not know what to do with me. I get reels that are aimed at feminine lesbian women, like as in like when I had one the other day that was like when a butch talks about strapping and you realize it's not to do with you, and I was just like, I sent it to like one of my friends who were gay, and I was like, what does this mean? She was like, does Instagram think you're a lesbian, Chris? And I think they do. I also, now this is interesting because I've got German friends and I've got like French friends. Unfortunately, I've got French friends and stuff like that. But a lot of my reels now are in German, which is really interesting because I can't speak German fluently, but I can understand memes well enough, which is a really interesting way to learn languages. I get
a lot of Chinese memes.
Oh yeah, like that beaver who giving the inspirational speach.
What?
Do you not
so
get
we
that?
both get beavers.
Yeah.
Hang on, like that beaver? I don't know what you're talking about, Chris.
Oh, have you not seen it? Oh man, there's this Chinese beaver who gives like a really inspirational speech, and I don't know what he's saying, but it's really, really good. It is really like I'm ready to give it one last try whenever I see him. He's a good lad. He's fun.
He is.
He looks like Donnie Yen, and I don't know how. Maybe he's modelled on him. I'm not sure.
Yeah, my algorithm is Chinese memes and lots of food, but like I don't know if you guys know if I've mentioned it before, but I'm a vegan. So the food I get are just big, dirty burgers, people eating kebabs. It's like porn to me.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is I always forget you're vegan because, and this isn't a joke, he rarely ever mentions it, which really goes against. No, like
he mentioned it in the last fucking episode, Chris.
Did he? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Shit.
Oh, I can't get any of the nice theme park food, for I am a vegan. I have to take my own packed lunch.
Right. Okay. We've just highlighted that I tuned Nathan out then, which I thought this was a much more pleasant conversation because I every time you bring it up, I'm like, oh yeah. And I'm like, he never really talks about it. That's really interesting. He really goes against the stereotype. And instead, we've discovered I'm just an absolute prick and don't listen to him.
That is the only time I've talked about it, though, to be fair. And because I was talking about how expensive it is for a vegan burger. £14 for just a burger, which is ridiculous, even for a meat
That
burger.
is ridiculous.
I'd expect it to be a Wagyu burger.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't talk about it as much. It's like once a week, maybe. He keeps sending us meat is murder stuff. I don't know. I feel
his hero
like
Morrissey.
I would be a vegan if I had more. Like if I had cognitive dissonance, because I love animals, and I agree with the the ethical part of veganism. But I just there's that missing bit where like I love animals, I don't ever want to see them hurt, but then I don't associate them with the animals when I see like chicken breasts in a packet, which is
it's not your fault really. It's just the way the world is. It's society.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I'm not giving myself an out here, but it is done intentionally, isn't it? Where it's like it's just like with workers as well. Like you're separated from the product of your creation, like alienation is this. Right, we're fucking rambling. Jesus Christ, this has got nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Or wait, for the record, I would never be a vegan. Animals are below me in the food chain, therefore it's Darwinism in action. And you can tell who's been privately educated.
Are you like you? That sounds like the monologue a villain would give while they were like rock solid, sat behind their desk.
Yeah,
it's Mr. Bond. I'm simply above you in the food chain, and I'm rubbing myself to death on my zipper.
I can't tell you how much I would love to be a Bond villain.
I would like to be one just to show them how competent I could be. Don't explain anything. Don't tell them anything. Just shoot the cunt. Like, there you go. Get 008. I'll fucking shoot him as well. Right, bringing it back to role-playing, one of my favourite jokes when I make a new character when I play Dungeons and Dragons is, I play a game like Dungeons and Dragons, is that I'd always want to be a druid who's a vegan, not because they love animals, but because they hate plants so much and get joy out of eating them. That would be, for me, that would be the best backstory for a vegan, is I fucking hate plants. That would be cinema for me. Ultimate cinema.
Whereas if you think about it, the Batman villain Poison Ivy, because she loves plants so much, she would have to be like a full-blown carnivore so as not to hurt them. Yeah,
that's true. So I was talking with someone just before I started the episode today, like one of my friends, and we were talking about the Mummy. Do you know the 1998 film? Was it Mummy?
99.
99, yeah.
One of the best films ever made.
Yeah. And she was like, "Oh yeah, I discovered I was bisexual because of that film." I was like, "Yes, you and everybody else. Like, yes, we all felt odd stirrings looking at Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser. You're not unique." And I was the same with Batman and Robin. But with like seeing Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy and that just did
I thought you just meant with Batman and Robin, like just those two.
It was Clooney and the bat nipples. It really it fucked me up.
Chris O'Donnell's got you rubbing your thighs.
Yeah, the bat credit card.
Yeah. Oh, I'll just borrow it from you. See, yeah, Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy that did some fucking crazy things to me. Pre-pubescent Chris, like before I knew what any of this shit was.
I saw Batman and Robin in the cinema with my brother, who's 3 years younger than me, and he ran out of the cinema crying at the transformation of the kind of midget prisoner into Bane.
Yeah, that scared the fuck out of me as a kid. I
think he's roughly the same. You're 1988, Chris.
No, I'm 93.
Oh, right, okay, sorry. So my brother was 1988, and it was a case of my parents and my sister didn't want to watch Batman and Robin, so they were next door at the bowling alley, and my brother basically just ran out of the cinema and joined them at the bowling. I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm watching this film. So,
I love that film. I love it. I don't understand when everyone's like, oh, it's a shit. Like it's the same
Batman
as like
Forever is more my jam because that was the first one I saw in the cinema, and I did perform "Kiss from a Rose" last month at an open mic in conjunction with my facial paralysis. So I'm standing there in the Chichester Arms in South Shields with a Phantom of the Opera mask, singing Seal's Kiss from a Rose, which you can find on my Instagram.
Yes, I have seen that actually. What's really interesting is you've started posting enough reels that when I'm doom scrolling, I see you and Nathan quite a lot doing like your stand-up stuff, which is it's always nice. I always give it a wee little like and then move on with my day. Right, stop fucking distracting me. We're talking about the history of role-playing games.
Baby, I can
Right.
Sorry.
TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games. Have you both heard of them before? Do you know what they are? I've already said Dungeons
Yes.
and Dragons, so but can you name any others? Do you know any others apart from Dungeons and Dragons? It's not a trick question. If you don't, you don't.
Call of Cthulhu.
Hell yes. One of my favourite ones. Inspiration for the book I wrote called The Horror at Beamish Hall by Chris Bradburn, which is my book.
Nice.
That was influenced by a Call of Cthulhu campaign I wrote for my friends. And I set it at Beamish Hall in Durham. And when I wrote my book, the fate of those characters is alluded to as like a throwaway sentence. And as in like, oh, that happened to them a few years ago. And that is that all that entire book and that horror story I wrote was based off a Call of Cthulhu campaign that I made. So yes,
Nice.
love that one. Hell yeah. I have regrets about that book though. I used sex in a way it shouldn't be. There's no subtlety whatsoever. So the entire second half of the book just becomes smut, and it's just I have regrets about that. But that's by the by.
Still available on Amazon?
Oh yeah, you can buy. Yeah, you can buy it everywhere. Yeah. Just search for the Horror at Beamish Hall. It's there. Oh, fuck it, I can fucking give you a copy.
That sounds like a threat.
Yeah, well, it is. It is once you read it. Yeah, the first half I love. I wish I'd done the first half all the way through, but the second half I made the mistake a lot of authors do when they're first starting out, is that I think subtlety is for people who are shit who don't dare. But subtlety is for people who aren't brave. And then reading it back, I'm like, no, you fucking idiot. Subtlety is there for a reason. You have fucked this story right up.
What's the Garth Marenghi line? It's like, I know authors who use subtext and they're all cowards.
That's pretty much it. That's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Right, Ian, do you know of any... did you play any tabletop games at Eton?
I will say, for the record, I did not go to Eton. And also, whilst I'm aware of tabletop MMORPGs or whatever, I have not played them. I am merely aware of them. My brother does do Dungeons and Dragons with his friends, and derisively, I refer to it as Goblin Dice. And that's whenever I'm checking on his availability to record our podcast, he's like, no, so I've got D&D that night. Oh, well, you enjoy your Goblin Dice, and we'll reschedule for another evening.
See, I'm not saying Ian's posh, but the games him and his friends played was Let's Raise Interest Rates.
We stopped doing that in 2008.
I saw a troubling statistic that the central bank has just recovered from 2008.
Right.
Very bad timing. Right. So tabletop role-playing games are in other countries like Germany, for example, they're called pen and paper games, and they are games generally to do with some fantastical element where you play as a character, or you play as an army, or you play as someone that is not yourself, and you play out a story alongside other people. There are solo adventures, but you generally go on some kind of quest or adventure or some kind of scenario alongside other people. However, it has exploded into the mainstream in the past few years. And I'll give you a quick, because today what we're going to do is I'll be right up front with you, 15 minutes into the episode. Right up front, what we're going to cover today is I'm going to give you an overview of where D&D is at today. Then we're going to cover the origins of role-playing as a game, going back to around the 14th century. Then we're going to go to the 19th century with wargaming. From the 19th century, we're going to take a short hop into the 20th century, the earlier 20th century, before we get to around the 1960s, 1970s, where we're going to end today's episode. So that is the journey we're going to go on today. So, Dungeons and Dragons is colloquially used now. It's interchangeable with roleplay, like tabletop role-playing games, right? When people say, and even I do this, right? For example, to everyone in my life, like if you were to ask me my availability, Ian, on a Monday, I would say, no, I'm playing D&D. And in fact, I've not played Dungeons and Dragons for about 3 years now. We play another game called Pathfinder, which is 2nd edition, which is based off an earlier versions of Dungeons and Dragons, which split off and became its own game. But it's used interchangeably because people in the pop culture know what Dungeons and Dragons is, generally.
Mm-hmm.
And it is fully mainstream. In the same way that Marvel broke through and like nerd culture has like become mainstream, D&D is exactly the same thing. So, for example, Stranger Things was a massive catalyst with this. It names its villains after D&D monsters. So you've got the Demogorgon, the Mind Flayer, Vecna. Like all of these are based on older Dungeons and Dragons monsters and stuff. So then when Season 4 dropped in 2022, Google searches for how to play Dungeons and Dragons went up by 600%. And that's because people were watching a show about some kids in Indiana and thought, I want to do that. And as a result of Stranger Things, after the first few episodes aired, the Dungeons and Dragons starter set saw a 250% sales boost. That is like how quick it broke through into the mainstream with like Stranger Things. Then one of the other things you might have you heard of a show called Critical Role?
Yeah.
Heard of, yes.
Well, I'm the same here. I don't watch this because I'm very much like, I don't enjoy watching things I could do myself. It's the same reason I'm not into cuckolding, because I'd rather just be there doing it than watching.
Or not.
But yeah, exactly. Like, I'd rather be doing a podcast than sit and listening to it, you dirty, filthy fuckers. Look at you, listening with your headphones on, embarrassed, watching three guys have fun while you just look. You sluts. So Critical Role started in 2015, allegedly, as a group of voice actors who were streaming their D&D campaigns on Twitch. I'm not entirely sure of the years, so just bear with me on that. But this was, so they took a game they were playing themselves and started showing it to the world. And people flocked to this. In the same way, I don't really understand Twitch in general. Like, why would I want to watch people playing games when I can go and play the fucking games? But people watch these people playing a tabletop game live for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. And there's now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, perhaps thousands of hours of just Critical Role content. And it became incredibly popular to the point now where people base, it's like a massive fandom where people base like their personalities around it. And it's crazy. And then they had a Kickstarter for an animated adaptation of one of their campaigns. So they had a D&D campaign, or a tabletop role-playing game campaign, that got turned into a show called Vox Machina. And I did watch the show, and I enjoyed that, because it was like an adult animation one. That was really cool. And at the time, it raised over $11 million and became the fastest funded entertainment Kickstarter at the time, which is just mad.
Yeah,
So
appreciate the hustle.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it made them very successful. They then made their own, their own games out of it. So, like, they've had a lot of success. They built, like, a media empire, essentially. It's fucking wild. As of 2024, over 50 million people have played Dungeons and Dragons. Just Dungeons and Dragons, by the way. Not to mention the wider tabletop role-playing game market. So, for all tabletop role-playing games, not just D&D, as of 2024 was worth between $1.9 and $2 billion. And by the mid-2030s, this is projected to go to around $5 or $6 billion. So it's a big deal. And you might have heard the name Gary Gygax. Either of you heard that name? Yeah, again, aware of it. He was one of the co-founders of the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And funnily enough, that's where we're going to end our episode today, basically.
Nice. All right. See you later, everyone.
When we get to Gary Gygax, hold on. But there was there's a convention in Indianapolis that Gary Gygax started in 1968 with 20 people called Gen Con. As of 2024, that Gen Con had attracted 71,000 attendees that year. It's this is how big it is. And according to a site called Dice Cove, in 2020, on the website Twitch, 4.3 billion, with a B, minutes of Dungeons and Dragons content had been watched that year, which is about 71.6 million hours.
Wow.
We're getting a scope for how big it is, right?
Yeah.
And there are even, and the thing is, this is still my intro. This is the intro. There are dedicated TTRPG holidays. So, for example, Gary Gygax's birthday is July 27th, and in 2023, Lake Geneva in Wisconsin declared it a civic holiday because that's where, that's how much he and I looked into that and I was like, okay, because obviously they were doing a lot of work there and they employed a lot of people there, but Lake Geneva Mayor Charlene Klein proclaimed July 20, and I looked at the actual declaration, by the way. I thought they're having me on here. No, I went and looked at the actual document. It is a proclamation. But they proclaimed it as Gary Gygax Day, and on that day dedicated a lakeside park bench in his honour. And in her proclamation, Charlene Klein reminded residents that in 1983, TSR, which is a company Gary Gygax founded, employed over 400 people, which at the time was over 6% of Lake Geneva's population. That's a significant amount of people to be employed in one community. So can you imagine employing 6% of fucking the Northeast? Like, you'd have a private army, wouldn't you? Like, it's
that's the plan.
Oh, we'll fight them on the beaches. Then there's also the Blackmoor campaign, which is we'll go into at the end of this episode on the 17th of April, which is 5 days from now when we're recording, and this marks the day of the very first Blackmoor session in 1971. And on the 4th of March, there is a fan-made holiday to appreciate your games master or dungeon master, GM or DM, which weirdly enough falls on the anniversary of Gary Gygax's death. So yeah.
Rip.
Sorry, go on. Rip.
Rip.
Yeah,
just rip. That's all. So
that's kind of what I want to like. That's without even going into how the game is played, or it's ostensibly you roll you roll your 20-sided dice, you roll your 10-sided dice, your 12-sided dice, whatever. You got different sized dice. You roll them. You tell your DM what you want to do. And the outcome's determined based on either dice rolls or skill checks or whatever. And through that lens, you can have fantastic adventures spanning all genres, spanning all time periods, from the prehistoric past to the post-apocalyptic future, right? And tabletop RPGs offer this flexibility that you don't see in like video games or any other kind of media. And that's where we're at now. But I want to talk about where it came from, because there is a lineage that stretches back much further than you'd realise. So there's medieval parlour games, there's military training tools, and then it's not until like the 60s and 70s we get to the basements and living rooms of Minnesota, where some nerds accidentally invent one of the fucking most enduring games and storytelling devices that we've seen. So just to cover off, we're going to go through 3 things in this episode. One's Ragman's Roll, which is the medieval section of it. Then Kriegsspiel, which is the war game developed by the Prussian military. And then we're going to get to the end of it, and we're going to look at the beginning of Dungeons and Dragons, which is Blackmoor, Braunstein, Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson. And that's where we're at, boys. Any
Okay,
questions
let's
so
strap
far?
in.
Did you say strap in or strap on?
I'm strapping on. I'm strapping in. I've got my character sheet here ready. Let's go.
Well, so you do have the stats, and we did this with our D&D group. So you've got your stats, right? You've got strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, right? Generally those 5 stats. What do you think your highest stat IRL would be? I suspect, coming from stand-up backgrounds, we'd all have a similar thought on this, but what do you think your highest stat in real life would be if you had to...
Yeah, probably charisma. Speechcraft, I would say, definitely. And get myself in and out of all sorts of problems. I'm very perceptive as well, I'd say. And
Nice.
talk to animals.
Yeah, fair enough.
Go over those 5 again.
Strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Oh,
Okay, definitely not strength or dexterity. So some kind of mix of the latter 3.
int, wiz, and cha.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. You can only have +5 in one of them, though. That's tends to be where you max out for D&D 5th edition. So if you had to choose one of them, that would be your main one. You can have don't worry, strength and dex would be what you call your dump stats, which is the ones you know you're not going to specialize in. So you could have
I'm going to say wisdom.
Oh, now, is that very wise to say that you're wise?
I have a master's degree.
Would that not be int? Don't get me wrong. Don't worry, Ian. There is a lot of debate amongst players when you're in a campaign, and the
Is it
DM's
wise to spend so much money on a master's degree that has no bearing on your actual career?
Well, I ask myself that every day with my master's degree. It's bullshit. What's the fucking
All right,
point?
let's switch to intelligence then.
Nice, but yeah, that happens. That happens to me quite a lot. As my DM
Hang on.
like back.
Sorry, there's a difference between wisdom and intelligence.
Yes, there is. So intelligence is what was the best way to describe it? I've heard it before, and it was like intelligence is knowing that something is hot, and wisdom is not putting your hand on it, or something like that. Like it's just wisdom is using. I think it's experience versus knowledge. I think pretty much.
Okay.
Like wisdom is used to is often used to like resist magical attacks, stuff like that, and then intelligence is used to decipher like books and stuff, and it's used in a lot of like how powerful spell casting is, for example.
Okay, so based on those descriptions, I think I'm gonna put all my chips on wisdom rather than intelligence.
Nice. All right. Fair enough.
I would basically be a bard.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think my every game I play, I end up specializing in some way with charisma, because it naturally fits me as a player. Because I end up I always ask to do like mad shit, but then my justifications, because I get so into the games, turns out to be like that helps a lot. So charisma's great. I love it. All right, but so again, if you listen to this, don't get your knickers in a twist that I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like, oh, well, actually, in this system, it's different. Yes, I'm aware. I know, for example, there's other systems that use other dice, like Call of Cthulhu, like Nathan mentioned. You've got things like your sanity points to how well can you deal with the eldritch horrors that you encounter. Every system has its own interpretation of maths, essentially, but we'll get there possibly in the next episode when we do the history of Dungeons and Dragons itself, because today we're just going to do the history of role-playing. But Ian, as a wisdom guy, would you consider the Roman Colosseum, when they recreated historical battles, do you think that would count as roleplay?
So, do I consider a building to constitute roleplay?
No, smartass. In the Roman
Rephrase your
days,
question then.
Wisdom
The
roll
ro-
failed.
yeah, couldn't decipher what I meant. Twat. Do you know when like they used to do like shows and battles in the Colosseum in
Yeah.
Rome, and some of these were recreating to them at the time as historic battles, right? Were the people who were on either side of those battles role-playing?
Were they role playing? No,
They were
some
playing
were very,
a role.
some are very much fighting for their lives.
Yeah, so it's more military simulation.
I
maybe?
think it's more kind of sadism at the want of the people putting on the event.
Yeah, true. I guess.
No,
So
I wouldn't call it role playing. No.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, every time I've googled like was this role play, they were like, no, dickhead. So
Wisdom intact.
You're strengthening that one. But then I'm not going to go too much into them today because it was too big of a rabbit hole to get into. But you've got the historic examples that I mentioned of like recreating battles across history, which falls into more the military side of things, if at all. And as Ian said, it's probably more sadism. But then we've also got things like masquerade balls, which are definitely role-playing events. I'm not going to get too much into that today because it's got its own rich history, and I can't spare the time for it. But role-playing is also it's a way that historically has been used to relive or recreate myths, or as a way for like a parlour game to make your own stories or recreate classic stories. And it's going to be really interesting because the first one we're going to cover is Ragman's Roll, which is the medieval one. And Ragman's Roll was also known as Rajaman or Rajaman Le Bon, and it is also the origin of our term rigmarole, which I thought was really interesting. So Ragman's Roll was a game that was popular in England for a period of around 300 years, so around 1300s to about 1600s. And it came to us naturally after a few centuries after the Norman conquest, when French influence crept into, like a lot of English stuff. Now, what was interesting was that everyone who wrote about Rajaman Le Bon, or this, everyone who wrote about this game, they all said that it was played mainly by the gentry in their countryside retreats. Like, was it banned in towns or something? But it just seemed like if you had bollocks all else to do in the countryside, you'd invite your friends over and you'd play Ragman's Roll, which, fair enough. There were in the 1200s, the French were playing a precursor to this game with slightly different rules called Rajaman Le Bon. But allegedly, Rajamon might have come from the Latin regimentum, which is a legal document. Or it could have referred to the ragged look of strings dangling from a scroll. And what you find really interesting is there's not a lot of consensus on Ragman's Roll and how this game would be played. And this is really interesting because you could still play this now. Like, people can recreate this game, but you've got to use it because the mechanics are all there. Like, everything you need to play the game is there, except some of like the finer rules. But as you'll see, with a lot of role-playing stuff, it comes down to you make up the gap. Like, if there's gaps, you just make up the rules to have the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
So if Ian, when you're having your next like eyes wide shut party, what you do is at the beginning of the night.
I was going to mention that.
Well, yeah, that was like masquerade ball type stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what you do is at the beginning of the night, there would be a bundled up bits of parchment, and there'd be 50 bits of string coming from these bundled up bits of parchment. And at the end of these strings were a little scroll, and there was 50 verses written on these scrolls. And I'll give some examples because like they were lewd, which I was not expecting. But the key was it was encouraged that the host could pick and choose the verses that were on the scrolls to cultivate a vibe for the evening. Like if you wanted a certain story or you wanted a certain mood for the evening, you would alter the verses or you would remove some or add some or whatever. But generally there was 50 of them, and it would result in group roleplay with elements of what we'd recognise as homebrewing and elements of a scenario. And we see that tons in games today. So there was a paper by a woman called Serena Patterson. I emailed her for this episode to get a full copy of her thesis. Unfortunately, she didn't get back to me in time. But it was that's how far down the rabbit hole I went for this episode. I was like emailing someone. I was like, I saw your thesis on a website. Could I have a PDF copy, please? Because I was trying to I chased down my sources, right? But she wrote a paper called "Sexy, Naughty, and Lucky in Love: Playing Rajamon Le Bon in English Gentry Households." And there was a letter. Oh, it gets a bit sexy. There was a letter sent by a noblewoman in 1459 to her husband, and she is talking about how important it is to get all the games right for the night, because they're having they're organising like a dinner party type thing, and she's really concerned with making sure all the guests have enough fun. And she talks about Rajamon Le Bon, and she talks about Ragman's role about making sure he gets it right, and it emerges that these parlour games, was a way to imitate people who were above you in the social hierarchy. So having a good evening playing these kinds of games could ingratiate you to your uppers, essentially, which was just it's part of politicking. So roleplay and games was there's almost a direct correlation between that and social movement, or your social, I don't know, what would you call it? Your social credit?
Yeah, social stature.
That's it, stature. Yeah, you're standing with your peers. So oh, Ian's coming over. Ian's such and such of such and such. We really want to impress him. Let's play Ragman's role. He'll love that. I heard he had a game and it ended really well, blah, 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 blah. Stuff like that. And it was just, wow. Serena further writes that the game was quite bawdy and, for the time, a bit sexy. Now, this is a bit of an understatement when I read some of these stanzas. So I'll come on to that in a sec, but the important bit I want to focus on is that this is organised group roleplay, right? That's what you see with tabletop role-playing games. And this is this letter was from 1459, but we saw it was being played in the 1300s, and before that, the 1200s in France, and who knows before then, because that's just the earliest references we have to it. And she writes, Rajamon Le Bon is an amorous game of chance that consists of 50 stanzas, each revealing a player's fortune and often about matters of love. Found in manuscripts over a 300-year period, Rajamon Le Bon surfaces in various guises in manuscripts for gentry audiences in England, including the Anglo-Norman sermons and Middle English Chaucerian games. Ian, am I saying that right? Chaucerian? Chaucerian? It's Chaucer. Chaucer-like.
Chaucerian.
Chaucerian. Attesting to its chameleon-like nature, the game text moves from provincial households of the emerging gentry to networks of urban players in London. So she's basically saying it could be played in lots of places to suit lots of different needs. And I found some examples of these verses, and can anyone speak French before I go on and fuck this up?
Petit quoi?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
so
I think again we've maybe touched on this on a previous episode, but not very much.
Okay, so I sent a recording of me saying this to one of my friends who was a native, a fluent French speaker, and she just said, I have no idea what you're on about. And I said, well, French people are like that anyway, so even if I could speak it perfectly, you wouldn't tell me. So, fuck you, Celia.
French people are notoriously rude.
Yeah. Vous tous trop de vodi, toujours erre del malompi, ou vous répondez comme sage, ou vous serez la malalrage. which roughly translates to a French person who's had a stroke. You often unreasonably falsify your words. Every day goes from bad to worse. Now you should repent as one who is wise, or you will have violent pain. So that would be your instruction for the night.
It sounds like a Shags lyric.
Oh no! My powerful foot. So you would get that on your scroll, and that is your persona for the night. You're a liar. You're a liar, and every day you're getting worse and worse. Like, and it's just like, and then the host would have a scenario that they'd want to play out over the evening. So you would play your persona all night of someone who just lies like shit. And another, now this one is, I promise this is exactly how it was written. Lovely lady, embodying whorishness, indeed you do not heed virtue. You will have plenty of children, but never produce a soul.
How romantic.
Yeah, and what's really fucked up is that if you look at the context of the time, saying they'd have bastard children, meaning they're unbaptized, so that they wouldn't go to heaven, which all I can imagine is that's their version of like an edgy rogue backstory. Like
my grandmother, who is still somehow alive at 105, did have. She did tell me at one point, I think around 2005, before my cousin formally got married and had her second child, she did say to me, I do love all of my great-grandchildren, Ian. The problem is, they're all bastards. By which she meant they were out of wedlock.
Not the little cunts.
I mean, there's that as well, but...
She's 105!
Yeah, I'm still surprised she's alive at the moment.
Holy shit.
Having gone to visit her at Christmas. But, I mean, she only got moved into her home over the summer last year. She'd been in her house up till her 105th birthday, and then started to have falls. And my dad, like a couple of weeks ago, was like, well, she's starting to howl in her sleep, and she's not really eating anything and just staying in bed. And that was 2 months ago. She's still here. So
yeah.
Damn,
Jesus.
Fucking
You
hell.
got good genes.
If she makes it till the end of May, she'll be 106.
Wow. Well, fingers crossed for her.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping some of those genes rub off.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, 100%. Yeah, fucking hell. But I mean,
I don't know. I'd like to die. I'd like to die before then.
Oh yeah, I've got no inclination, but I'm seeing my pension. Not with the amount of the alcohol I've drunk.
Hell no.
Well, yeah, I mean, this could have been your fortune, Ian, because another stanza that players could get, because some of these were like, they were personas they had to play out, but there was also like elements of like, this is a fortune for you as well, like as in fortune telling. But another stanza that you could get is, you are rich, but in the end, at the conclusion, with games of tables and dice, you chase at poverty. And
yeah, you're telling me I live in Benwell.
And perhaps the best one, and again, I am just writing this as I found it. You are spirited and amorous. You fuck often night and day. No matter how ugly you find a woman, you will fuck her willingly.
Oh, that's my one. That.
Yeah, that's not me.
I would.
Yeah, that's me.
That one. Can you imagine that one? Like, just whip your cock, like, just a nobleman. You can imagine, because it would always be like eyes wide shut shit, wouldn't it? Like someone would get that one, they'd just lob their cock out.
Hell yeah.
I mean, the joys of eyes wide shut, they're all wearing masks, so you can't tell if they're ugly as fuck.
I don't know. I've got psoriasis. You can tell when I've got my clothes off.
Someone spilled talc.
Yeah, what's going on here? Why's the cocaine everywhere?
Oh, so moving on to the word rigmarole. Ragman's roll is the origin of our term rigmarole, which seemed to appear in English around the 1700s, but may have been used earlier as local slang in Kent, of all places.
Oh God,
Yeah,
shithole.
the Garden of England, and everyone's been fly tipping. And it means like rigmarole means something akin to like filler, nonsense, bullshit, a long drawn out process, a complicated procedure, etc., etc. Now, what's really interesting is that Ragman's roll is one origin of rigmarole, but there's also Edward I, who got the Lords of Scotland to sign his Ragman's roll with wax seals on ribbons attached to a big document, which is exactly how the fucking game was played. Right? So, like, you can so. What's fascinating here is that the game, Ragman's Roll, had strings or ribbons attached to verse of poetry on parchment. So this is where we've got this really interesting confusion, or like, it's not quite clear. Was Edward I's Ragman's Roll named after the game, or was the game named after Edward I's Ragman's Roll? We don't know which came first. It's really, and it seems to be, if there was a consensus, it's the most likely is that the document from the king was named after the game, because the game, when it like the scenario, like the background information for the game, apparently it's a fictional king who writes these bullshit verses, who was called Rajaman Le Bon, Rajaman the Good. But it's really interesting that like we've got a real legal historical document that might have been named after that. Which is just, what the fuck. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I'm just humming. It's a hum of that's interesting.
It's just, yeah, like in future, we call this the Overwatch, and it's named after a game that was popular in the mid 2000s. It's just like, what the fuck? Merriam-Webster states the roll was called a Ragman roll after a fictional king purported to be the author of the verses, like I've said. But by the 16th century, Ragman and Ragman roll were used figuratively to mean a list or catalogue, which that's what they were. Like, you know, there was a list of verses, but there was also a list of Scottish lords. Both terms fell out of written use, but Ragman roll persisted in speech, and by the 18th century, as I mentioned, it resurfaces as rigmarole, with one source saying it was 1736, with the meaning of a succession of confused, meaningless, or foolish statements. And in the mid-19th century, rigmarole acquired the sense of referring to a complex or ritualistic procedure. And then, around 1939, it transforms into the bit of the silly meaning that we know today. So like, oh, that was a fucking rigmarole is now less likely to describe like a complicated legal process and more to describe phoning up a call centre and getting passed around by fucking 7 different people.
Right.
So that is like, that's the earliest proper role playing that I could point to. What are our thoughts on this so far?
Yeah, I didn't really think it went that far, but I suppose everyone kind of wants to escape from reality.
Yeah, especially under Edward I. If you were Scottish. Hence the reference of Scottish lords made sense.
So would there have been a lot of people in Scotland who could have played this? Like, would there have been noble people? Like,
I mean, there's no noble people in Scotland, but I think I think the idea that there'd be a lot of games fantasizing about taking down a tyrannical king, when Edward I basically made most of his rule about imposing his rule on Scotland. I think that explains Braveheart, basically.
Well, there you go.
Oh, fuck me.
Because that's a fiction and a terrible film. If I haven't said that before, I'll say it here now. Braveheart is a fucking shite film and ahistorical.
I've never seen it. Yeah, I've never...
The one thing I'll give it, it's beautiful to look at. It's very well shot. Otherwise, it is bullshit.
Yeah, no.
Well, there you go.
I don't know anything about the period in history or anything like that. That's a shame. I always felt like it was a film I should watch, but now it seems like it's like.
I mean, watch it for the yucks. Just don't think of it as in any way historically accurate. Because, I mean, Mel Gibson's in it. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, treat it as historically accurate as The Passion of the Christ.
Is it?
Well,
how the
that's
fuck
not
would we even
historically
know?
accurate.
Yeah, I don't even know how we'd know if it was. There's one more I want to mention around this period-ish, around, well, medieval, before I move on, which is Chance of the Dice, from Chaucer even. Chance of the Dice, or Chance of the Dice. And there was an article I found of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where they mention, and this was one of the earliest like role-playing with dice that I could find, which you didn't see in, obviously, Ragman's Roll, but they made reference to Chaucer wrote Chance of the Dice, which was a fully playable game. Now, I went as far as I could, but I could not find a proper translation, a full translation of this, so I'm going to have to quote the article instead, I'm afraid. Dice was sometimes used for gambling, but also for more casual recreation. Indeed, dice games inspired what we might think might be some early role-playing games and accompanying poems. Sounds like Ragman's Roll. An example of which can be found in the Middle English poem Chance of the Dice, which is a series of fortunes or descriptions of characteristics and prophesied actions that are assigned to different rolls of the die. We don't know for sure whether this particular poem was actually played or if this was just a sort of literary conceit. After all, it falls between Chaucer's Book of the Duchess and House of Fame, but it is fully playable. So to me, and I don't know if you guys follow my logic here, this sounds like a poem where you would roll the dice or a series of dice, and the result of that number would be the stanza where you would get your role-playing character. Like, you play, like, essentially, you're rolling your character creation through a poem.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're randomizing it.
Yeah, that sounds like what it'd be to me. So it sounds like a more like it's like so what we'll see when we get, especially in the next episode, when we get through into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. It sounds like a second edition of Ragman's Roll almost. It's like, oh, okay, right, we've updated it with some new rules, we've got some new content, and this is how we're gonna play it this time. So like you read, and that's what happens with a lot of role-playing games, is you refine the rules and you move forward. And you know, you have like second edition, third edition. Dungeons and Dragons, for example, in 2026 is on 5th edition, and it's just about to move to a new edition. Pathfinder, I've mentioned, split off from D&D around the 3.5 edition 3.5, and became its own version of Pathfinder 1E, as in first edition. And now there's a second game called Pathfinder second edition, which is what I play. So yeah, this is quite common. And it made sense to me that like you'd have updates to rules, or someone says, oh, I want to play the game slightly differently, and they go off and they say, right, my game is branched and now it's called X. So Chance of the Dice to me sounds like Ragman's Roll second edition. I don't know. Seems like it just seems like it'd work. That's for
we'll call it that.
Listening. Yeah. Right, now this is where I think you'll both be much more comfortable now. Is let's talk about the Prussian army.
Hey.
Oh yes.
Actually, I haven't warmed you up to this, and if you can't answer, don't worry, I'll edit it out. Can either of you explain to me what the fuck was going on with Prussia in the early 1800s, before around 1830 is where I'm looking at, because I saw a map of the because I saw the phrase the German states, and I was like, what? And I always thought Germany was like one country. Oh, I could not have been more wrong. Oh my God. I saw a map of Germany in like the 17 and 1800s. What the fuck? What the hell is going on there? What can anyone Shit, I just dropped my phone. Can anyone explain to me what was I shouldn't gesticulate when I'm especially when I'm making speeches about Germany. I shouldn't really wave my hands around that much. Yeah, what was going on? What the hell?
Nathan, would you like me to take this one?
Yeah, go on then. Why not? I'll let you have a go.
In the 1900s, Germany wasn't actually a proper country until...
This was 1800s. Does that still count?
1800s, yeah. Germany wasn't a proper country until, I think, 1885. Until Wilhelm kind of unified all of the territories. Before that, by and large, everything were the German states. Earlier on, say like 300 years prior, it was better known as the Holy Roman Empire. Therefore, it was really more a lot of provinces that came together. So Bavaria, Prussia, all that jazz, really. And it took a kind of internal conflagration to unify the states into what we now know as Germany. And obviously, Germany's borders fluctuated, what with the world wars and, what what the kind of ground they ceded as a result of their bad behaviour. And
Eurovision didn't help.
Eurovision was basically what I was referring to. Also Hitler. But yeah, Eurovision first, then Hitler, then in a distant third on the podium, Kaiser Wilhelm II. But yes, so what was going on in the 1830s in Prussia specifically, I couldn't tell you.
No, that's fine. I just needed literally
the states were in a bit of upheaval.
Yeah, because I saw a map and I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to ask Ian. I saw the map because so we're going to cover two time periods here. We're going to look at 1812, then we're going to look at 1824.
Right.
So if you've got anything to add around that as we get to it, please do. But I saw a map because it said the German states, and I was like, whoa, because I like having visited Germany and I'm going back next month. I love Germany. But I had no idea about the history.
Oh, Germany's great now. There's no Nazis.
I had no idea how fucking fragmented it was. Like, crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to look at the Kriegsspiel and the Prussian army. So we fast forward to the early 1800s now, and there's a game that gets made by a fella called George Leopold von Reichwitz. And every time I hear Leopold, I just think of Butters from South Park.
Yep, Leopold Stotch.
Yeah. And I should have asked my friend, but I think it's Reichwitz or Reichwitz.
Everyone knows it's Reichwitz. That's me.
That is
in my
me.
front pocket for you. So George Leopold von Reichwitz had a dream about making an actually good military strategy game, and the game ended up being called Kriegsspiel, which means war game or war play in German.
Right.
And it's still played today based on a rule set developed originally in 1824 using maps, dice, miniature figures, which are often wooden painted blocks, with patterns to denote the type of unit they were, and an umpire or referee who receives written bits of information from each player, and they move their units around the board, interpreting and executing the orders given to him by each player as slips of paper. Now, an impartial third party who interprets your actions and tells you the results of them. I mean, what does that sound like with D&D?
Yeah, he sounds like the dungeon master. I've played a game like this before. I think it's a very, very dumbed down version of it. Maybe something it's evolved into, called Diplomacy.
Ah,
have you?
Nathan,
Yes.
This the one we're going to come on to next, Braunstein, is specifically influenced by this and Diplomacy. So
Okay, I'll wait.
Do you want to hold and spurt your load when we get there?
I'll hold it in. I'll put my finger in my urethra and I'm holding it.
Good, because I looked and I've just got a line about Diplomacy, but if you can expand on that when we get there, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, boy, I love it.
Collaboration. So why is Kriegsspiel notable? Why have I raced through history and stopped in the 1800s, right? Because we know wargaming has been around for thousands of years, right? Except it was just chess. That's it. Like there was other like for example, there were other games that used dice and stuff like that. Like the first 20-sided dice, for example, was from 2nd century Egypt, and it was used for a game, but it was also used for like fortune telling and stuff like that. But for the majority, with it being like such an old game, chess is the game of strategy and tactics, and it has been for thousands of years, right? So when you talk about wargaming, for most of history, you've been talking about chess. But without me being a facetious twat, Germans did love their war games, and they had other war games before Kriegsspiel, but they were all derivatives of chess, so they had their same downsides, right? And the downsides were, and imagine now you're looking at chess as a war game, right? I shouldn't have to explain it too much, because we play it as a game as it is now. But you've got that is an army on the board, right? That's what chess is.
Mm-hmm.
And each piece would represent a unit, like cavalry, infantry, and this is so the war games that the Prussians had before this all acted like chess. So the downside would be the board would be grid based, with each grid, like let's say each grid represented a mile or so. Then only one piece could occupy one square. So you're saying like only one unit of infantry could be within 1 square mile of another one. They couldn't possibly be any closer than that. And if they were closer, it was because they were fighting, right? That doesn't work. That's not realistic. Then you'd have the issue of like, you'd have coloured squares on the grid representing terrain. And again, it wasn't good enough because you'd have things like rivers flowing at right angles and then flowing in straight lines, which is unrealistic and unnatural for when you're trying to model battle. Because that's what wargaming was. It wasn't just a pastime. It was military simulation as well. Like, it was gamifying military simulations. Like, you were modeling battles and doing strategies and tactics and developing those parts of your brain to help you win real battles. You with me so far?
Yep.
So all of the war games they had to that point, so you'd have color coded squares like blue for water, green for forest, brown for dirt, whatever, right? It was restrictive and it didn't allow accuracy, which the military yearned for. Just like a horny woman on TikTok yearning for a dark vampire to abuse her in some smutty book, the German military yearned for accurate wargaming. And everything they had to that point was just, it was just recognizably chess. Enter George Leopold von Reichwitz. As a Prussian nobleman, as a Prussian nobleman, a baron, obviously this cunt didn't have a job. So he was able to
he's Prussian.
So he was able to dedicate himself to his hobby of wargaming. That's it. That's all this was it. He just wanted to do that. And start to develop a better way to move his little fellas on the board with more realistic terrain. And, well, where would you start with that? He did the most natural thing in the world. If you want to make if you want all your games so far are chess, you want to make it better, where would you start?
Chess.
Okay, all right. Now let's get an answer from someone who's not a complete retard. Ian?
So repeat the question. Where would you want to start?
All of your military games so far are derivatives of chess, almost. Like, they're still recognizably chess. You've got a lot of downsides. It's not very accurate. How would you start? What would you start with? Where would you go? How would you tackle this problem, Ian?
If the information was available, which I understand regularly wasn't with this kind of game, you'd want to start from the high ground.
Yeah. Or we could have the right answer. I'm really disappointed in you both if you didn't get this. You put a load of damp sand on a table. That's where you start with. That's my response.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. That was the next thing I was going to say.
Yeah, my wife comes to me, she's like, Chris, how are we going to pay the mortgage this month? I'm like, get some damp sand on that table. Yeah. We're going to work through this.
Of course.
That's County Durham for you.
That's the way David Bowie used to write his albums. He just used to put damp sand on the table, and then he'd write a song in the sand with his penis.
Inspiration would hit.
Yeah.
Damp sand. So that's what George. I'm just going to call him George. It's terribly informal, but I'm just going to call him George. So that's what
Everyone
George did.
knows he's George.
That's me. So George got a nice load of damp sand and he started sculpting. Now, this is fucking awesome. I have seen that. So he makes a prototype, right? And this is cool. I've seen pictures of this prototype and I'll send it to you after the episode. So he goes for a prototype of his new game. And around 1810 or 1811, he makes an experimental table, which is a full... So it's a full, like, a unit, right? And in the unit, it's got drawers and stuff like that. So what he does is he covers a table with damp sand, and in it, he carves hills and valleys, the high ground. So Ian, I was being a bit tongue-in-cheek. So he does. He makes the hills, he makes the valleys, he makes a 3D battlefield, which is already blowing the tits clean off any previous chess-like versions, right? He is creating a terrain out of damp sand that you can maneuver troops around. And then, instead of one unit per piece, blah, 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 he adds wooden blocks to represent troop formations. And word of this, there's not a lot going on, I imagine. Word of this gets back to some of the Prussian royals, the princes. Do you know who the sons of King Frederick Wilhelm III were, Ian? Do you know how many of them? Right, me neither. So anyway, some of these princes wanted a demonstration. And they hear about this, like, oh, this baron's inventing a new game that we all like, because wargaming is a cultural pastime at this point amongst the militarily minded. Now, I don't know. I mean, obviously, Epstein Island is the obvious parallel for what our rich get up to nowadays. But I don't know whether the equivalent would be like Call of Duty or Battlefield being like a hobby for them. So it was basically like a load of people who enjoyed the same thing, who were all militarily minded. And they heard about it. So the princes asked for a demonstration. And Reichswitz gave them it in 1811. They absolutely loved it. So much so that they recommended it to their father, who was the aforementioned King Frederick Wilhelm III. I don't know anything about him. Do you, Ian?
Say that name again.
King Frederick Wilhelm III. I don't know what.
No.
Can't have been that important if Ian doesn't know about it. But
there we go.
Not wanting to give the king a table of wet sand, which obviously is a mistake, because I would. Reichswitz upped his game, so he makes a whole table cabinet now. So he's went from his prototype to the real cool shit. So he makes a full cabinet, which has drawers for all the pieces that can be put on the table, and the table itself folds out into a board that gives 36 feet square, so 6 by 6 feet, playing surface. And instead of wet sand, he uses porcelain tiles that were fully modular, so you could swap them in and out whenever you wanted. And they had bits of terrain painted in bas relief, so it stands out.
Right.
And it could be mix and match. And instead of, like, do you remember we had said the chess derivatives were all like 1 square is 1 mile and it's 1 unit per square, blah 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 blah. He went further, and it was given an actual scale of 1 to 2,373. So it simulates an actual, like, this is, like, much bigger. And for any of the people who play things like Warhammer 40k, the other tabletop gaming with, like, the models and stuff, this is where rulers and dividers to measure movements across the battlefield come in. So, like, now, for example, if people play, like, Warhammer on the tabletop, you can move like 6 inches at a time, and it comes from this, where this was the first time you could measure it. So rather than saying, oh, the grid is 1 mile, you can move 1 mile per round, it was instead, right, figure out how heavy your stuff is, and you can move 6 inches, and 6 inches on the scale of 1 to 2,373 would be whatever the fuck that would be. So you'd simulate moving massive distances. And all I can say is that this was a big day for autistic people. Like, this was like the opposite of when Alderaan gets blown up in Star Wars. Like, if autistic people can all use the Force, like we all know this. So that day around the world, there would have been a ripple of excitement when this happened.
Yeah,
And
that
at
and
that
the invention of the locomotive.
that comes into it later on as well. Funnily enough, Nathan's you're probably precog on this shit. Later versions of this introduce things like the telegraph pole and railways and stuff. So
I thought he was talking about Kylie Minogue.
Oh, Ian, shame on you! Don't bring up the Australians on this. So this is 1812, right? We've still got a ways to go, but this is 1812. This becomes a hobby mainly for the royal family, and they love it, but it's not yet commercial, right? This is kind of like a one-of-a-kind type thing. Well, not quite one-of-a-kind, because there's other ones but they're still very much prototypes. It's a handmade thing. But importantly, some of the rules aren't fleshed out yet, like hand-to-hand combat, for example, or terrain advantage, or having ambushes, etc. And unfortunately, Ian, you might be able to highlight this for me, I don't know. Reiswitz Sr. lost interest in the project by 1816, and allegedly it was due to something to do with the Napoleonic Wars. Was that happening?
The Napoleonic Wars were going on around that period.
So he had other things on his mind, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, fair to say. So it fell to his son to bring it forward. Enter Reiswitz Jr. Now, this guy was actually in the army as an officer. And some of his peers, who were mainly junior officers, they had this little club together, right, where they played games and... Well, no, they played the game. They played this Kriegsspiel. And they worked on the rules.
The game?
Oh, you've just lost the game. Everyone's just lost the game.
Oh, damn it.
That's when it originated.
That's it, yeah. So they had this club together, and they worked on the rules. Now, importantly, this is now senior, it's military officers are now all working on the actual rules for this game. So it's not just one guy by himself. It's now got like a full team of people who are like working on it. And a Prussian prince, I don't know which one, learned about this and joined the club because he had fond memories from playing the version that Reiswitz's dad had made. So this guy was like, oh shit, we play this at my house all the time. Oh, all right, there's a new version with new rules. Count me in, bitch. Which I think there must have been a bit of shaky ground there, because you're all relatively junior officers. They were like lieutenants and captains and stuff like that. So like not senior brass, but obviously still officers. So then you've got a prince join in, and you're like, oh shit, do we have to let him win? Or like, what? Like, how does this work? So yeah. But crucially, in this version where the rules are being worked out, we get something that I didn't expect this to be the origin for this. We get the concept of hit points, or HP. This is where it first crops up that I could see. Because in other war games that the Germans were playing around this time, when units attacked each other, it was like chess. They were taken out, right? So
yeah.
Pawn takes bishop, pawn takes rook, rook takes knight, doesn't matter. If you attacked, you got took off the board. But Reiswitz didn't like this. So instead, he wanted to reflect real life, where pieces represented units. There were groups of people, there were groups of artillery, machines, whatever. So reasonably, you could sustain multiple rounds of attacks before a unit fully collapses. And it also adds another thing that all nerds will resonate with. Variable damage that was determined using dice. So how much damage an attack did was determined by rolling some dice, and that also determined how much hit points you lost before you were totally defeated, which represented actual battle. Because if you have a unit of soldiers, like a full platoon or whatever, they don't just all give up and go home because one of them gets shot, which obviously is more realistic. And Reiswitz made another advance that incorporated the technology of the time. So his dad had used the tiles and the bas reliefs and stuff like that. What he instead did was he now added battle maps as a feature, because between 1812 and 1824 there'd been advances in printing and cartography, which means that the Prussian army had access to topographical maps now, which reflect real world conditions really well. So like we've all seen proper maps, like the lines closer together, it means something's really steep, and and you've got proper scales on, so you can see. So now they've got actual proper maps like that they can use, and these maps, instead of the scale the prototype was, they're now at a scale of 1 to 8,000. So it's gone from not just a game now or a way to like sharpen your mental faculties. This is now you can model real battlefields on real terrain. Like you can modify real units in real battles on real terrain and work out the best approach. So if you know you're going to have a fight somewhere and you can get the map far enough in advance, you can play a few games of Kriegsspiel and work out the best way to deal with it. So it's like, this is really fucking cool. Because now, instead of just a game, we've also got a nifty training tool, which is...
Yeah.
Yeah, like I couldn't believe like how deep all this shit was when I'm thinking that I play it now as an orc necromancer who shags ghouls, and this is the history that my characters come from.
How the mighty have fallen.
Yeah.
Your character.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ghost of Reichwitz fucking hates me. Apparently, also as well, I just want to slot this in. Apparently, nifty is a possibly shortened version of the word magnificent. And it first appeared in the 1860s in the United States. And so they perverted good old English to give us a really good word. So that's quite nifty.
Yeah, it is.
There are arguments to that, though, but that's nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
So, we're going to talk about another staple, which is a dungeon master or a games master, like DM, GM, right? So in Kriegsspiel, this was called an umpire, and we've already talked about this, that instead of wargamers, the people who play in Kriegsspiel, instead of them moving their pieces around themselves and doing the outcomes, that are they, I move down the hill, and because I've got the surprise, I take out their whole unit, right? That's how it would play out if they were doing it themselves. Instead, they write down their orders on a piece of paper and give it to the umpire, who then, as an impartial third party, puts themselves in the shoes of the soldiers who would interpret the orders, like in a real situation, and then they carry out the orders as if they were those soldiers on the battlefield. Now, can you imagine how there would have come times where someone's wrote something down and then it's discovered that they're actually really terrible at communicating? And like this is where it's like can you see the use in it as a training tool here as well? Because it's like, oh shit, I've got to get better at writing my orders down, or I'm going to get people killed.
Yeah. So that, they didn't have any specific like lingo to write it. They just had to try and communicate as best as they could. There wasn't a specific way.
I imagine there would be ways to communicate military orders, but I think around this time is it before the telegraph yet? So there wouldn't. Well, I mean, they might not have been able to communicate except by written commands on the battlefield. Right. Because this is all the senior military figures. This is officers, right? So that not all of them might be there on the battlefield. They might be at like a safe point behind the lines, communicating things. So, I think it wasn't mentioned anywhere, but I do think that this would have to be a way to really sharpen your communication skills. Like, as in, I think I've asked them to do this, but the umpires interpreted it like that. Oh, shit, that might be me. That's the problem. I might be the drama here.
Yes, I can see how that could be frustrating.
Yeah. It's like, oh, no, I meant that. Well, write it down better next time, dickhead. You fucking
tough tits.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, and this is where it really blurs that line between a game and a training tool. So this is a staple, right? We've got that referee puts themselves in the shoes of the situation and interprets the orders. But the umpire also rolled dice to determine attack and their effects, and they would remove units when they were killed from the battlefield. Again, it's a textbook Dungeons and Dragons DM or GM, right? They also had something we see that hadn't been seen till now, the fog of war, which is something that goes well beyond the TTRPG, right? This is in video games. I mean, this is all sorts, right? The fog of war. So, for anyone who's not sure, this means what can you see? That's what the fog of war is. During a battle, what can each unit see? So the umpire made decisions on who could be seen depending on terrain. They also kept a track of anyone who was hidden and in ambush, and they deployed the blocks, because everyone could see the wooden blocks, obviously. They deployed the blocks only when they determined that the unit had been discovered or would be perceived by other troops on the battlefield. And the umpire also had the rule of cool, which is what's called in D&D games, which is that if any gap in the rules didn't cover a certain situation, the umpire had to arbitrate, and they had to decide what was best in the moment. And because of this, the umpire needed to be an experienced and impartial officer, which is really funny later on because Kriegsspiel becomes so popular, they don't have enough experienced officers to arbitrate the games. Like, there's so many games going on that they can't, like, staff them all, which, suffering from success. DJ Khaled would love that. Sure.
Why? Why would he? I didn't get that one.
It's suffering from success, isn't it? Like,
oh man.
Another
Let's say
one.
DJ Khaled.
DJ Khaled.
We the best.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
don't know.
not helping me.
I don't know what he is. I don't think. What does he do?
DJ Khaled, he was one of these people that would just shout during songs. It was usually in the early 2000s, going into the 2010s. And before songs, you'd hear DJ Khaled would shout if he would be included in the production and engineering of the song. Jason Derulo would say his name. Pitbull would say Mr. 305, and so on and so forth. I'm glad that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, well, you got Kendrick Lamar who shouts "Mustard," but Kendrick. Lamar
Yeah,
can do
well,
what he wants.
he's the GOAT, so it's
Yeah,
okay.
he can do what he wants. Yeah, don't make a diss song on me.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to diss Kendrick Lamar for my own safety.
No way. He's awesome.
Yeah, so just to point out as well, I know this would be a tad obvious, but I think we could probably thank Kriegsspiel for that trope you see, or like in any like military movie or any footage where they're in the command room pushing things around a map.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much that, right?
Yeah.
Right, cool.
Yeah,
I was
do
wondering about that.
I do apologize, guys. I know I'm doing so much talk in this episode. I've had so much fun researching all this that I just wanted to share it with the world.
Don't apologise. Don't apologise.
Now we've got the best name coming up. Best name I've ever heard in my life. In 1824, the game was adopted by the Prussian. Does anyone know why they're called Prussian? And
Yes.
is there a
it's,
relation to Russian?
the province of Prussia?
Is it related to Russia?
No.
Is it Luigi and Waluigi type
No.
shit? Wario and Mario?
No.
Oh. Bowser and Baby
Just
Bowser?
coinky dink.
No.
Is it just a coincidence?
No. Yes, Chris. Yes, it's just a coincidence.
Wow. Very well. So, the Prussian...
No, Chris. No.
The Prussian army adopted it as a training tool for the officer corps, and the chief of general staff, are you ready for this? General von Muffling, it's spelled Muffling, loved it. And as a result, all regiments in the army, the Prussian army, got a set. They all got a Kriegsspiel set, which in today's
nice.
money costs about €1,700 each. And that makes it the first war game to be adopted by a military for training and research. Now, I don't know how many of our listeners know this, and I don't know enough about it myself to make more than a passing comment on it. However, there is a fuckload of money spent by militaries on video games. I did not know that until recently. They spend a tremendous amount of money on video games simulating to train their soldiers, and that is just crazy.
Yeah, like Animal Crossing, Viva Pinata.
I used to in 2015, about 11 years ago, I used to be a recruiter before I got into IT in general, long before even cybersecurity. But before I got into IT, I used to be a recruiter, and
Scum.
yes, I fucking hate them. And I interviewed a guy once for a job, and he worked on military. So he was a software developer, and he worked on military sim games. That was all he did for his whole career, was military sim, and not one of those games had ever been released like widely. It was all like bespoke stuff for the military, and he had to do things like model ballistics for experimental bullets and experimental projectiles and stuff like that. And I found it was absolutely fascinating because he was like, yeah, every single bullet that he code would track its coordinates on the map and stuff like that. Like, it would know exactly where it was and its trajectory, and it would calculate it all, like, forgive the pun, on the fly. And it was just absolutely baffling to then read about this, about games being adopted by military for training, and then see just how much money you spent. Like, I think some police forces do it as well for, like, active shooter situations in schools and stuff like that.
Were they all playing Grand Theft Auto?
Probably. I mean, yeah, probably not. Oh, actually, there is no, is there? There is some servers where it's role playing, and it's like heavy role players. Like,
yes,
Grand Theft Auto role play is crazy. Where like,
yeah,
you do
I've seen
proper
some hilarious videos about that. There's a guy called Cheeto Head. Shout out to Cheeto Head, who just goes in and gets banned from these very, very heavily role played servers by just being a complete twat. It's great. You should give them a watch.
Yeah.
So Chris, yeah. the guy you interviewed.
Yep.
Did Sainsbury's take him?
No, but Rolls Royce did.
Okay.
Yeah. Not enough experience.
Yeah. Yes, I know you can code, but can you stack? I'm a full stack developer. You stack these shelves, cunt.
Yeah, just put the fries in the bag.
Yeah, put the fries in the bag, bro. So yeah, so the General Chief of Staff adopted it for every unit in the army. Got one for their officers in 1824, and 3 years later, Reichswitz killed himself.
Oh,
yeah. Sorry, I didn't know how to end this section. So,
well, that's one way.
Yeah, so wargaming carried on, and it was by 1860 it was fully, like, widely adopted in the military, the Prussian military. The rules continued to be refined, but they tried not to mention his name when they did it, because apparently he died in disgrace for making bad remarks about his superiors or some shit. So, yeah. But the game got DLC. Over the years, there were revisions to the rules, there was expansions, there was new additions, and they added things like railroads, telegraphs, and even when the new breach cannons, I don't know what the fuck they were, but when breach cannons were invented or started to be used by the military, they added them into Kriegsspiel as well.
Cool.
Now, adoption of the game sped right up in 1866 during the outbreak of the Austro-Prussian War. Then it even further accelerated it in 1870 with the Franco-Prussian War, because all the officers collectively shat themselves and realised they need to get good at strategy in war, because there was a lot going on. Yeah. There was developments to the game over the years, and it's still played now today. Like, there's a Kriegsspiel society, and at certain points there was amendments to it called the Free Kriegsspiel movement, where you could arbitrate even more of the rules. So, like, it's still played in its recognizable form today, and it's a direct influence on Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's a direct influence, and we're going to see in the next bit, we're going to look at the little bridge between Kriegsspiel and Dungeons and Dragons. But before that, there was have we all heard of the author H.G. Wells?
Oh yes.
Yes.
He even dabbled in the wargaming genre. He published a book in 1913, which was a rule set for playing with toy soldiers, and he gave them stats and rules and how you could, how much damage they could take before they had to be removed from the board, blah, blah, blah. And it's very much a wargaming rule set, even though he was a notified pacifist, a noted pacifist. The book is colloquially titled Little Wars, but It's one of my favourite long titles. I love when books have short titles, but then you look into it and you're like, it's because the full title is fucking weird or bonkers. And in this case, it's the latter rather than the former. The book is colloquially called Little Wars, but the full title is long as shit and is actually Little Wars, a game for boys from 12 years of age to 150, and for that more intelligent sort of girl who likes boys' games and books.
I've got to say, 150 is pushing it. I mean, my granny's 105.
Yeah, well, she can still
I don't see
play
her
this.
lasting another 45 years.
Well, that's what you think. She'll outlive you.
Pirate memory games aged 4 to 8.
Oh, you like that? I'll wait. I saw
Excellent.
it's a little Britain reference. I saw a picture of Matt Lucas the other day, and he looks like Nosferatu. Like that guy. Not only has he squandered his own legacy, he's squandered his own fucking face, and apparently is just.
And apparently his fingers, if you're calling him Nosferatu.
He's just look at there was I'll send you a picture. Look at a picture of Matt Lucas these days. It's fucking weird. He looks like the last turkey on the shelf. Like it's just fucking. I'm sorry, but like no, I'm not sorry. Fuck him. But like, wow.
Again, the previous episode had the wonderful words of David Williams.
Yeah, I'd still rather have a pint with Matt Lucas.
Exactly. Yeah. No matter how hard he looks.
Yeah.
I just think they're both twats. So, we'll move on to more recognisable times, because we're going to pick up in the late 1960s, 1968, I think. So, before
the era
Dungeons...
of the Shags.
Oh, yes, it was. Wasn't it their first in Fremont? It was their first.
It was their first outing,
yeah. Yes.
Correct.
So while that was happening in what was it? Was it Rhode Island? No, it wasn't Rhode Island. New Hampshire?
It was New Hampshire, yeah.
So while that was happening in 1968, and before Dungeons and Dragons, there was a campaign called Blackmoor by Dave Arneson in 1971. But before Blackmoor, there was Braunstein by David Wesley in the late 1960s, 1968. So David Wesley made a game called Braunstein, which was modelled on Kriegsspiel that we've just discussed. So David was part of the Midwest Military Simulation Association, the MMSA. And don't let the title fool you. It's just a group of nerds in the 60s and 70s who collected figures and played games. That is what they were. Fucking nerds. But they also took inspiration from a game called Diplomacy, where players had to, and so the players had to negotiate with each other in between turns. Now, Nathan, could you give us the elevator pitch for what Diplomacy involves?
Okay, so the game I played Diplomacy at work. It basically lasts over quite a long time. Some of the games take absolutely months. You've got a map of Europe. Other maps are included, but the main one is you've got a map of Europe. Everybody gets 3 different supply centers to start with, unless you are Russia, because Russia is so big. You start with 4 supply centers and you get either armies or you get fleets. Your fleets can travel on coastlines and over seas, which is just one space at a time. And your armies can only travel via land, or they can be ferried by fleets. And the whole point is there's like 5 or 6 different players at once in different countries. I believe it's England, then France, Germany, Austria, Italy, Turkey, and Russia. And you're all playing at the same time. It's all about taking over the supply centers. There's 34 supply centers all over this map of Europe. After every 2 turns, if you've taken over a supply center, you can then get another either army or fleet. The whole point of it is you talk to an individual umpire. You send him your movements of, let's say, for example, you are sending a army from Moscow to Ukraine. Well, it's MOS to UKR. It's usually how you do them. You would send him that information. But you could also talk to the other players. So you could be discussing with Austria as Russia to go down and kick Turkey's arse. And Turkey wouldn't know that you're doing this. You could betray them. You could be talking to Turkey at the same time and make them think that you're going to be doing a certain thing, but you completely screw them over. And it's good fun. You get an updated view of the map after each turn to see what's going on. Everyone starts arguing, and then you've got to make friends. It's good. I love it. It's great.
That's all. So is that like that's grand strategy, isn't it? That's like things like Crusader Kings and
Yeah, but it just lasts so long. So we used to do it twice a week. So Wednesday we would have to send our moves in, and then we'd get everything back on the Wednesday night once the games master had a look and see who's taken over what, who's been supporting who, and everything like that. And then on the Saturday, I think it was, we would then send our turns again, and then we'd get one updated on the Saturday. So it takes a long time because you need the time to be able to convince people to be either on your side or against somebody else. And you need to give everyone a chance to be able to chat to everyone. It used to be, you used to have to send letters in, I believe, to do it, which would take even longer. But like obviously we had Facebook and social media and stuff, so it was a lot easier for us.
Is this when you were doing forklifting as well?
Yeah. So
I fucking love that. Oh man, your work sounds mint. Drive a fucking forklift and do diplomacy.
It was quite funny because sometimes you'd see someone like come up to you in your section of work that doesn't work there, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's he doing here?" I'm like, "Give me 2 minutes." And I'd have to walk over. I'd be like, "What's up, mate?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "We need to go take Germany out." I was like, "I know, but I'm currently getting fucking pressure from France, so you need to leave me alone for a little bit. I'm not going to move my. Well, I'll shift my one of my fleets so you can move over. But if you fuck me, I'm going to fuck you." And he's like, "Oh, I won't, mate. I won't." So yeah, it was good. It was good. I really want to play it again, but the guy who used to run it is retired. So
oh my god, that sounds amazing. Right, I've got to ask: was there ever any like proper arguments? Was there any beef?
there was not beef, but I won the first game that we played, and nobody understood the whole point of leave everything from the last game behind. Because after that, no one would trust me. I was fucked. On the second game, I was completely fucked. No one would trust me at all. They were going, "No, you betrayed this." But it's like, that was a different game. You can't do that. They're like, "Yeah, well." And so I was England, and I think I just got trapped because everyone sent their fleets round straight away and boxed me in, and I got completely fucked. They all just focused on taking me out, and then after that had a merry old time with their game. So there wasn't arguments, but there was some foul play afoot.
There was some you were punished for the sins of the father were visited on the son.
Yeah, the sins of my ancestors.
Oh my god, Ian, have you ever played any like grand strategy type stuff?
No.
All right then.
Does risk count?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it definitely does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It all comes from this, right?
I didn't play a lot of Risk. Moreover, my first year kind of flatmates. I mean, flat's probably the wrong word. We were all on the same corridor in the halls of residence before we moved into a house together for our second year. But when I got my first student radio show, which was for an hour on a Saturday night, they would listen to me in our shared kitchen, and to pass the time whilst I was stuttering and going, "Oh, well, that was the coral, and now this is Queens of the Stone Age." They'd be playing Risk. So I was almost playing Risk by association. I have played Risk before, but not very much.
You playing Cook?
Yeah, Risk is like diplomacy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, diplomacy was a bit. So David Wesley, he made this game called Braunstein. He took a big influence from Kriegsspiel as well as diplomacy. He also took inspiration from other war games like Strategos, which is not the same as the board game Stratego.
No.
Strategos was developed by a fella called Charles Totten for the US Army. It was published in 1880, and it was their version of Kriegsspiel, but the difference was there was different levels of complexity and could be played at all levels of like the military rather than just elite military officers with tons of experience. So you could go from like you'd play the battle report, for example, where you'd be like soldier level, all the way up to the grand like the big strategy of the Kriegspiel type game. So it was a good tool for everyone learning and developing battlefield like tactics, right?
Oh, I just want to add one more thing about the diplomacy games we've done because it's something I forgot and it's really, really cool. You'll like it, Chris. Is the guy who was running it, the games master, he thought of himself as well, he was a bit of a science fiction writer. He used to write books as well. And when he was doing it, every time we'd send him our moves, he would interpret it and like put the map up and then he'd write a whole story as to what was happening in the war and give us all like characteristics, give our armies like what it was we were doing. We'd all have general names and stuff like that. He'd say like the devious, I think I was called the devious general carrot fingers or something like that. And worked hand in hand with the French and blah blah blah. But it was like it was a big narrative that we could follow all the way through, and it gave quite a lot of it gave quite a lot to it, added a lot. It was good. It was cool.
That is amazing. And you and I must be on some kind of twin sync because the difference in David Wesley with his game is that rather than players playing a whole unit or a whole army, David Wesley's characters in Braunstein were given individual characters with backstories, agendas, goals, personalities, and each of them was given a role in the town of Braunstein, a fictional German town, and they had objectives, like find out who was the French spy, for example. Some were bankers. It wasn't just military roles. That's crucially here in Braunstein. Some roles were bankers, the mayor, rowdy students, Ian, spies, intel operatives, revolutionaries, counter-revolutionaries. So when David wrote the first game, he had 20 people turn up to play, which was much more than expected, right? But this guy's still running these games today, by the way. But even though there was more people turned up than expected, he gave everyone roles and assignments. For example, advance the cause of the French Revolution or protect Prussia, right? And each player was meant to communicate with a referee in the next room, like diplomacy. But what happened instead was that the players started wandering around talking to each other and began to role play amongst themselves as their characters. And he even had to come up with rules for player versus player combat when two players challenged each other to a duel. And that is so common amongst TTRPG players today. It is unbelievable. Like, we never change. From the word go, the first fucking game where individual people were role-playing characters in a recognizable setting to modern D&D, the first game ever, they were like, I want to fight that cunt. Like,
Yeah.
we've just not changed.
No.
But what's really interesting, this is really what got me. Dave Wesley, he was bereft. He was distraught after this. He thought it had completely failed. He thought this had been a complete failure. He thought it was too chaotic. And he was like, I've proper fucked this up. So when people started hounding him to play again, he was really surprised. And he just couldn't believe that people loved it as much as they did. And they wanted it more and more and more. And he ran 4 or 5 scenarios over the years. So he still runs them at conventions nowadays, which is amazing, unless he's died in the last couple of years. But I saw a comment from him on YouTube a year ago, so I know he's at least around in 2025. And he still, some of the scenarios change. For example, one of the scenarios is in the unstable country of Banania, where it's a banana republic, where players have to, it's great. Like, players have to either stage a coup or prevent a coup. And one guy turned up and convinced everyone he was a CIA agent, and even had a CIA badge he'd brought with him to the game. And at the end of it, he was loaded into a helicopter to be flown away from the island, where he, quote unquote, accidentally dropped the whole cargo of the aeroplane he'd had loaded, which was pro-revolution flyers. And that is how he had advanced his cause and achieved his objective, which was to stage a coup. And we'll talk about that CIA agent in a second. But what's important here, like I really want to point out, is that this role-playing aspect introduced something that is now a staple in D&D and like tabletop games in general, which is open-ended roleplay. So this was like the first time that we could really see that you weren't constrained by anything other than, I don't know, could you reasonably do it? What do the dice, like what does the referee say? Like what does the DM say? So you try and do the thing you want to do, and the referee determines the outcome. And this now, for any tabletop players listening, this is a phrase you would hear your DM say, which is going to spell your doom, is, well, you can certainly try that one, and rolling a lot of dice, which is normally how a lot of my characters die.
Yeah.
So before we go on, is there anything anybody wants to say about Braunstein? Any questions you have? Anything I can... anything you want more details on?
I have a few Braunsteins in my pants. That's all I have to say about that.
What a fucking use of free will that is, Nathan. I don't know. Of any of the games so far, which one do you think you should play the most? Like, which one do you think you should like to play? So I think this is
Diplomacy.
For me, it's either Braunstein or Ragman's Roll. I think I'd want to play.
Braunstein sounds fun.
Yeah. What about you, Ian? What
I'm still not entirely sure what Ragman's Roll actually involves.
The host, so at the beginning of the night, the host would, I think that, like, let's say they pretend to be King Rajaman Libon. They would say, they would say that for the next few hours you're going to be your persona, and at the end of it, your objective is steal some jewels, kill your rival, blah blah blah. Because people, like, quote unquote killed each other during Ragman's Roll. Like you would, so you would like you would act out your persona. So it's a parlor game. So it's more like it's more like a mini masquerade ball than a game we would recognize with like an achievable end goal. But there would be end goals where it'd be like, oh, if you can manage to convince someone to help you steal the crown jewels or something, like that would be an example of a scenario. Or find the spy in the room and kill them. You know,
Okay.
so that Ragman's Roll would be like that. But
In that case, I'm going to say Ragman's Roll.
it'd be very much more like a way to just have... It'd be like a mini masquerade ball, essentially, right? Like you're all playing a role and you're all having a laugh. And I imagine there's lots of drinks involved. There's got to be. Like, you don't play Ragman's Roll sober, do you? Wait, that's what I'm
no idea.
So, we're going to talk about that CIA agent who turned up to one of the games and convinced everyone that he needed to be escorted off the island via helicopter. That was a guy who was another member of the MMSA, and he became involved in these games and started acting as a referee. And this was another Dave, and this one was called Dave Arneson. And interestingly, there is now a convention called DaveCon, which where Dave Wesley goes and does Braunstein games. Dave Arneson's dead now, I think, but DaveCon celebrates like all the DaveCon celebrates all the important Daves in the tabletop gaming genre. Very pretty cool place. So Dave Arneson is the co-author of the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. He started in wargaming, and he loved Braunstein, as we've discussed. But over time, he started bringing in more fantasy elements. Like he'd start running his own Braunstein games, and he would start bringing in fantasy elements from things like Lord of the Rings. And then in 1969, he met Gary Gygax at a convention, which obviously would lead to a very fruitful partnership. And before Dungeons and Dragons, we have our last stop along the way, which is Blackmoor. And Blackmoor is which obviously like Black Swamp, is the adaptation of the Braunstein games set in the fantasy land of Blackmoor, which is a barony. That's a lot of barons today, inhabited by monsters, and it had a general kind of like medieval theme. So it wasn't a fictional German town; it was now a fantasy land. And the scenario begins to involve things that we would recognise. So this is where we start to have things like quests, like go here, escort this caravan, get this princess to safety, like stuff like that. And in return for the quest, they get like magic items or gold. And crucially, first half of the D&D name, this is the first recorded dungeon crawl as we'd know it, which was the tunnels underneath Castle Blackmoor. That's so the dungeons part of Dungeons and Dragons feasibly originates from here, from Blackmoor. And this is the first recorded, like, you go into this underground space that's full of danger and untold riches and rewards, and you and the other players fight through the challenges to emerge victorious. And Blackmoor itself originated as a place because Dave Arneson was part of a group called the Castle and Crusade Society. They've got some really fucking good names, these people, just to describe nerds. But these were wargamers who focused on medieval wargaming. So again, like, it'd still be like Kriegsspiel, but it'd be like swords and arrows, swords and bows and shit, right?
Trebuchets.
Trebuchet, that's exactly it. So Dave Arneson was a member, and they had so this Castle and Crusade Society, they made a big fictional kingdom together, a bit like Diplomacy, right? Where they parcelled off the land and the whole world was split amongst themselves. And Dave was given the northern reaches of this kingdom of a barony. And there is where he began to make medieval games that gradually started to involve more and more fantasy stuff. And then he posted an advert in the magazine for the Society, which I love, and I'm going to read the full thing here. It's very short, but there will be a medieval Braunstein, April 17th, 1971, at the home of Dave Arneson, from 1300 hours to 2400 hours, with refreshments being available on the usual basis. It will feature mythical creatures and a poker game under the Trolls Bridge between sunup and sundown. That was that advertised the first game of Blackmoor. Come to my house at 1 o'clock. Like,
there will be punch and pie.
Yeah. That punch and pie. I love that. Like a bunch of nerds reading a magazine and just being like, oh well, we're not doing anything on the 17th. Let's go to a stranger's house and roleplay. I mean, like, honestly, that still happens now, like with how prolific D&D is. But the novelty of this happening back then, that's so cool. And the game itself, because it was a Braunstein variant, the roleplay aspect was sorted, but the combat wasn't. So initially, the combat aspects was drawn from a game that Gary Gygax had written with a guy called Jeff Perrin called Chainmail, which was a medieval combat game. But, however, as they played, Dave became annoyed with the systems and how rigid they were, so he began to mix and match, and he started to use dice and formulas to solve situations. And this is where we really see how murky it becomes, because D&D, the first edition of D&D, and even Blackmoor just before that, is such a mix and match of all of everything that's come before it. So I've showed you like the component parts so far, but what you're really seeing is that by the time we get to the first edition of D&D, it wasn't like this brand new thing. It was, this is the culmination and best presented version of all of the things that have come before it. And that's where we come with it. So this is where they start to refine the rules and start to mix and match it. And this is where we get some of the concepts that are still in D&D today. For example, armor class, which is like how hard are you to hit. That is very common in a lot of games now, not just anything to do in D&D, but it's like your armor class, that was drawn from Chainmail and then refined in Blackmoor. Because in Chainmail, it was literally had a rating of 0 to 8 of how hard you were to hit, how tough you were. And Blackmoor refined that and made it an armor class. Then we saw hit points. We saw with Kriegsspiel, these were here. How much health does your character have? How easy are you to kill? And this one is crazy. Before Blackmoor, there was not really recognizable character progression. Like the concept of leveling up wasn't really there as much. There's some aspects of it that were hinted at in Chainmail, like the medieval war game. But the idea of your character developing over time and getting stronger, anecdotally, seemed to come from the fact that players were sad that the game had to end, and they'd done the adventure under Castle Blackmoor, and they wanted it to continue. So that whole concept of characters leveling up came from that, which is just... It's so ubiquitous now. Think of how many things involve leveling up. And
Yeah, that's where it all came from.
Yeah, like, it's just... It's like, wow, like, what the fuck? So we're right near the end now. So Blackmoor continued to develop over time with Dave running games on it. And there's still people around now who will tell you the stories of going to Dave Arneson's house to play Blackmoor and just getting absolutely fucking destroyed because it was so brutal. And they've got, like, fond memories of doing this. Like, that was how it was in the 70s. Like, you would turn up at a guy's house and be like, I heard you running a game today. And he's like, come in. And that's it. You sit down, you make your character, and you try and get the treasure under Castle Blackmoor. It's just so cool. And there's people now who still, like, that's 50 years ago. That's more than 50 years ago. It's 55 years ago. And people are still telling stories about it. Like, so Blackmoor continued to develop with Dave running games in it. And this was known as it's become known as a campaign, which is ubiquitous now.
Yeah, that's what is said, yeah.
Yeah, and in parallel, over in Lake Geneva, Gary Gygax was running another campaign, which was one of the best-known, earliest campaign settings in D&D called Greyhawk. So you've got Blackmoor and Greyhawk. Both of these get folded into the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So in 1972, Dave Arneson shows his game of Blackmoor to Gary Gygax, and the two together then begin the development of the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons, which leads to over 50 years of play and development over more than 5 editions, which we'll go into next episode. And it's a phenomena that has now been catapulted into the mainstream, holds a huge place in pop culture due to things like Stranger Things, Critical Role, the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Anything to do with video games generally comes
Baldur's
from...
Gate.
Baldur's Gate is perhaps the biggest thing to come from Dungeons and Dragons in recent years, possibly. And it's become the general domination of nerd culture across the world. And that, dear listener, is where we're going to pick up next episode when we cover the history of Dungeons and Dragons as opposed to the history of role-playing games. So
Very
now,
cool.
I've brought you right to the edge, and I hope that you can last with your blue balls until you hear the next episode. That's it, gents. That's the history of role-playing games up to 1972. With
Very cool.
The beginning of the development of the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed hearing about all of that, so I thank you for that information. My bladder does not thank you though, and neither does my dog's bladder. But no, that was cool. I like that. I'm a big strategy nerd, or I think I was. It turns out I knew fuck all really in comparison to like what the hell was going on. But yeah, cool.
I too thank you, because I didn't know just how far rooted the kind of tabletop RPG roots were prior to Dungeons and Dragons being a thing, and how it all tied into kind of military strategy, because obviously military strategy has been a thing for millennia, but the idea of tying it into games is something I've never really considered before.
It's fascinating. I know, right? But yes, I don't want to delay, 'cause this has been a longer episode than usual, so I don't want to delay much longer than I need to. Thank you for bearing with me on this one, guys. There's been a lot to get out. I feel like I've just talked a lot and my throat reflects that, but I'm hoping I'll have some more interactive bits for you next week. And for the listeners, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the history and bearing with us. But other than that, I think it's time to say goodnight for me, gents. So I'm going to say goodbye from me, Chris.
From me, Ian.
And from me, Ian.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.